What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Alex Cuesta Show. How is everybody doing out there on this Wednesday, June 21st of 2023? Before we get into all the fun stuff, like, share, follow, subscribe, rate 5 stars on Spotify and iTunes. Spread this word of mouth. Go find us on the socials at the Alex Cuesta Show. And unfortunately, I haven't been able to announce that we have a new co-host. So David is still here. Hi, David.
Hi. I'm doing well. I'm glad you asked.
I didn't ask.
I know you didn't ask. I'm glad you did, though.
I did not.
I'm doing
ask.
well.
I'm not very interested. No, how's it? Everything is going well with you?
Yes. Everything's going well. There is a very needy cat behind me. She's been on my chair all evening. So if you hear any noises like a little bell, it's probably her.
So my wife, so I'm not deathly allergic to cats, but I am allergic. And the other day, my wife is just sending me pictures like, I want this cat. And I'm just like, get it. What do you want me to tell you? Just get it. She's like, I want you to come pet it. I'm like, that's definitely not happening. So if you want to have this chance, like, Dave, you know Julie, like, you know how she is. She's like, come pet it first. I'm like, no, just get the cat or don't. So that's my little cat aside, but everything's going good here. You still have your big news coming up, which I think we have
next week,
another week, and then you can
It is promised next week.
Really? No, you know what? Don't promise anything, Dave. We live by.
Oh no, it is promised on whether or not it's going to happen next week. That is definitive.
Okay. So before we jump into this week's show, last week's show, we had a fantastic guest. We had your friend, which is miraculous. You have those, Kelsey. She came on. She's the co-owner with her boyfriend, Pokeboard Co. It was a really cool show. Her and her boyfriend, they take old skateboards, they carve them out, and then they paint them, different cartoon characters, and commission them out. So it was a good nerdy show. We got into our Star Wars and all that type of stuff. So definitely go back and give that a listen. And Dave, you know what I noticed? We have a string of Manchester going over the last few weeks, starting off 2 weeks ago with Cole.
It's a good thing.
And then last week with Kelsey. Yeah, it is a good thing. It's nice to jump back to our roots. And, this week, I think we kind of reached the pinnacle, though, because we have two really cool guests. They're in our local government over there at Manchester. It is Rob. I didn't ask you your last name pronunciation, so if I mess it up, I apologize.
He's going to mess it up.
Rob, is it Arace?
Oh.
Is it right?
So funny. So funny enough, even on the campaign trail, no one quite got it right. Mostly because you are right. It's Arace.
Okay.
My family has never pronounced it that way, so we've always been Arace since the beginning.
Race. Are you winning the race?
Exactly, we did.
Yeah, you did. All right, so Rob Arace, he is the mayor of Manchester Township, and Roxy Conniff, she's a council president. And going back, she stuck out childhood with me and somehow agreed to come on the show. How are you guys doing tonight?
Doing well. Good. Thanks for having us.
Yeah. So I'm excited to have a great time. Now, I'm also honored, too, because, Rob, you're actually the second Manchester mayor that I've had on a show. I did a previous show called The Median, and I had Mayor Ken Palmer on.
Awesome.
So he came on, and that was a little bit of a different show where I kind of played devil's advocate, which was fun. Yeah. To talk to him, but it's kind of cool. I keep on getting the mayors on. Now, I really hope that you're going to be around for a long time, so I don't have to have another Manchester mayor on in a little bit. But the hope is that you hang around. So I want to jump into show because we don't do video, so people can't see. But you guys, in terms of politics, are not old. You're not typically what people think of, graying out. Now,
geriatric.
If any of you are graying, definitely get the hair color going. But no, you guys, you're not old. You're not graying, which is typically what we think of, especially in local politics, right? In local politics, it's a lot of, the good old boys, the good old girls, the people that, did PTA and now they're just kind of moving on up, right? So, Rob, I want to start with you.
Sure.
What was your reasoning for running to be the mayor of Manchester?
Well, a couple of things. I will say I have quite a few more gray hairs than I did in January.
I could imagine.
a couple years more worth of gray hair in 6 months. So, it's interesting. I've always wanted to be involved in some capacity locally. Actually grew up in Beechwood, so a town over. And kind of growing up, I was always involved with my church, community sports. And when I was in Beechwood and wanted to start getting more involved in the community, I joined the recreation committee, and the mayor wound up appointing to me. At the time, it was super exciting and a really big deal. And then my wife and I wound up getting married, and she grew up in Toms River, and we decided to move to Manchester. We had like best friends that grew up there. My wife's grandparents are in one of the Crestwoods, and I kind of just wanted to continue the momentum of getting involved somehow locally. So it's really interesting. Like Mayor Palmer's an awesome guy. He like really gave me my first shot. So I met him, and he kind of like saw that young blood was needed in local politics. So he appointed me to the zoning board so I can get involved and get some experience under my belt. But I've always kind of wanted to be involved in the community. And it's really interesting because at a local form of government, you're actually closest to your constituents. So you can hear them and you can actually make impact and change like very quickly at a local level, as opposed to being at a state or congressional level where obviously you have more power, more authority, and you control more money. But if you want to make immediate impact and change, it actually happens at the local level. So it kind of just unfolded naturally from planning Easter egg hunts all the way to kind of being mayor over the course of 5 years. And I will say moving to Manchester is where Roxy and I kind of crossed paths, and then us being in really similar age and becoming friends. Roxy, from kind of her connections and the government, she was able to kind of point me in the right direction. And now really 5 years later, here we are. So,
and Roxy, people don't know about you that you've actually been involved in New Jersey politics with the Republican Party for a little while now. So this is kind of seems like a just logical transition for you to jump in to some form of government, whether it was local, whether it was, going into like a state level or something like that. What made you decide to eventually choose to go back into Manchester and, jump into our council? And I'm going to apologize right away, Roxy. If I call you Koberger at all, I apologize. And Sean, because I knew you as Roxy Koberger. So
I know. Yeah.
I apologize. Yeah, I apologize to you and Sean. Sean, I'm sorry. But but overall, so what made you decide to jump in there?
Honestly, I never saw myself running for office. I always liked doing like the background stuff. I worked, like you said, I worked in government, and I worked for different administrations. I worked on campaigns, and I always enjoyed that aspect of it. But now to be an elected official and be, at the forefront it's a lot different. And the only reason I really chose to step up to the plate was just because it is my hometown. I didn't like what was going on, and I saw what was happening, and I thought about what the future of our town was going to look like. And I just couldn't let, a couple people ruin that for the future of our residents. So it really had to do with just being a soft spot in my heart, being a hometown girl. But it's been a wild ride, but it's fun having him with us.
And I was pumped when you told me you decided to run, because I knew kind of, I know your family, I know your basis. You were, involved in ROTC. You were always kind of, we were always kind of just the standout conservatives together, like around the school. Like right, when it wasn't popular to be conservative, we were kind of just like,
it's not like it's popular now.
Cool. And it's even less popular now. But even then, a lot, it was still much more cool to just go along with whatever the progressive idea was. And here's a few of us going no, we don't want to do that. And so it was cool with you deciding to do that. Now, what has the learning curve been? Because you get in there, you run the election, and you're bright eyes. That's kind of, I'm in, this is cool. And then you kind of sit behind the desk and you're like, well, I didn't expect this. So, Roxy, you could start this one. What's the learning curve been being council president, jumping in there?
It's been kind of easy for me just because I have had that background in government. I think the hardest part actually has just been being young and being the youngest person at the table. And having all these professionals around you who've been doing this for a long time, and they're the experts in their field. And then, here you are coming in and you're 20 years younger than everyone. And they're probably looking at you what is this person going to do to lead us? So I guess for me, it's mostly been trying to hold my own, but
yeah, that's definitely tough. So Rob, what about you jumping into the mayor's seat, being the main executive of the town? What has that been like?
Yeah, it was really interesting throughout the campaign. A lot of people, it was very interesting, right? So the young families of the town during the election, the momentum I think was really with them for us. Yeah. But knowing that Manchester is 65%, 55 plus, the folks that I really had to convince that I was capable of the job of being the executive and really the seniors. So it took us 2 years really to convince them of that, and they'd ask the same question. What experience do you have? So, I do have a business background of about 8 years, so that was helpful. However, to an extent, well, have you ever really run an organization of this size? And the answer was no. But my answer always was that you are the people that you surround yourself with. So luckily, over the course of now the past 5 years, I've made really phenomenal connections with really experienced people. And that's kind of always been my philosophy, that to be able to network and find the folks that have really been there and done that, to where I had a vision for the town and I knew where I wanted to take it. But in terms of the practicalities and the budgeting and the professionals, I was really able to lean on that network. So that was really my plan all along. So for instance, in Manchester Township, it's mayor, council, and then your mayor has a business administrator. So my business administrator has, a wealth of experience, 26 years of a mayor himself. Wow. From actually Stafford Township. He was also the business administrator at a county level. So the plan had always been, obviously there's a learning curve, but if I have a vision and I think it's very ambitious and it's, I want to move fast, but then able to lean on a business administrator that I brought in who knows hey, let's elaborate on this. Here are all the details. Here are how things are going to unfold. Here's who we need to talk to. That has to be done by resolution. That has to be done by ordinance. Let's consult the township attorney. So the plan was always that, being, in my mind, a good leader isn't necessarily being the best, but it's having the ability to surround yourself with the best people. Yeah. So I think, we were able to do that fairly quickly, and it's helped tremendously over the course of the past 6 months. So I think what happened a lot of the times is that people doubted me when they saw me. When they heard me speak, I convinced them. And then I think the results over the course of the past 6 months have really been kind of driven by the people we've surrounded ourselves with. So certainly a learning curve, but it's been much better, I think, because of the people we're able to plug in some of the important positions.
I find it it's interesting because you sound like that young first year head coach in a sport, especially basketball. You get that first year coach, and what do they always bring? They bring that former veteran head coach that's been there that can, kind of, and I guess it's kind of tempering. Like you said, you're very ambitious. So I can imagine you're sitting there talking to him. You're I want to do this and that. And he's just whoa. Let's talk about this first. Let's talk about that first. We can do this. This might be down the road. I feel that'll be a cool time sitting at the table doing those.
Well, and it has been amazing too, right? And I kind of laid out my agenda. We had a number of things that we wanted to do. We had, policy we wanted to pass. We had, a budget that we needed to fix. We had things we needed to do for emergency services. As you guys probably know, water has been an issue in Manchester since the beginning of time. Water capacity, water quality, right? So water infrastructure. So, I sat down with him and had pages and pages and pages and pages of things to do. And that he quickly realized, he was like, Mayor, you're going to realize that government doesn't move nearly as fast as you'd like it to. And it has been true, but it's wound up being a really nice yin and yang type experience because, he does have so much, a wealth of knowledge, and I'm kind of always pushing the train forward. And to your point, he's always slowing things down and elaborating, but him and I are meeting in a middle, and he's done a really tremendous job where you'll find business administrators where they'll come in and they have their own agenda and the thing that they want to do. And you'll be at odds with the BA, and the BA will be pushing for things. He is very much found my voice, found what my vision for the town is. And he's been just a tremendous advocate of executing on a day-to-day basis. So, I would say that if you are young and you do get involved and you do win, surround yourself with experienced people and fast and people that have the best interest for you and the town. And I think that's what we were lucky to find pretty quickly.
So I've always been curious, what is your relationship as mayor with the Lakehurst mayor? Because obviously they are a borough of Manchester. They have their own mayor. What type of, do you have any jurisdiction over the borough, or are they completely independent and you guys kind of work hand in hand with what you want to do? Because it is overall Manchester. So how does that work? Lakehurst?
Yeah, it's completely independent. So Lakehurst has their own mayor and their own council. I believe their form of government is very similar to Manchester, directly elected mayor. And I will say Mayor Harry Robbins, he's a phenomenal person. And in fact, he is one of the people, because he's been there so long, so experienced. He's one of the people a lot of the times that I will, go to with questions. And he's always been extremely supportive. I think his family they've been friends with Roxy's family for a really long time. So yeah, I have no jurisdiction over Lakehurst. They're completely independent. We do have some shared services. We actually, one small fix to the Manchester water issue is that the council and the mayor, we had recently worked on something called an interlocal agreement where we'll be purchasing water from them to help some of our water capacity. They take some shared services from us, like they'll buy fuel from us. They share our court. So there are certainly things that we do to collaborate together, but completely independent. And Mayor Robbins is a super good guy. So
yeah, certainly. So I want to bring up something that I can imagine it probably might be a little difficult on both of your dockets. Right now, the country, I feel like it's obvious we're all going through this little culture war thing going on with the right and the left. And I know this might be tough, but David and I have talked with looking back at Manchester, we have an extremely diverse populace in terms of when we're walking through the high school, like we didn't realize how good we had it in terms of all the relationships, all the different walks of life, different cultures that we got to experience with, people from Whiting, Hollyoaks, Pine Lake Park, Summit Park, Richard Estates. Like we have such a varied area. What has it been like for you guys kind of observing the culture war, what it's been going on via, schools and the town? And what do you guys kind of take a role in that? Are you guys heavily involved one way or the other? Or are you just kind of trying to make sure everybody keeps the peace?
Want to go first? Or you want me to?
You can go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I think so. I think the most contentious part when it came to like culture and politics was during the campaign. I think it really, a lot of that always comes to it that someone tries getting the best of someone and, they'll say you're not Republican enough or you're too liberal or vice versa. And they really try like creating division in elections. I think my philosophy since we've kind of taken over and we're sworn in is that one, Manchester Township is nonpartisan, right? So it's actually one of two in the entire county. We don't run on Republican or Democrat lines. And at a local level, something that you'll find is that everyone, when you're talking about nationwide, national, even statewide politics, everyone's warring over it because it does become, brings in social issues. It brings in differing philosophies. But what I've tried to do at a local level is that everybody wants a new road without potholes in it. Everybody wants clean water. Everybody wants to be able to go home to a safe house. Everybody wants their kids to have the highest quality of education possible. Everybody wants clean parks. So what you realize is that when anybody wants to start reaching for the national politics and they want to start getting wound up about it, is that, well, no, our platform is X, Y, and Z. We want clean water. We want our seniors to be protected from extremely high exorbitant rental increases. And you realize when you talk about that, because that's a primary responsibility of local government, it actually starts unifying people. Yeah. So it takes the spectrum out of it a lot of the times between left and right or what the culture wars are. And obviously those things are still there. Yeah. And but when you kind of disarm everybody and say that like this is our job and the money that's coming out of your pocket and your taxes and how are those things being invested locally, the conversation becomes much less about like you versus me and it really is more us. And now what I've realized is that even when the nationwide conversations do come where you build trust, it's only been 6 months. So I would still say I'm trust building, right? Yeah. I think we've built a lot of trust, but I've always say, actions are stronger than words. And I was basically like, give me 4 years. So anybody that didn't like want to support me, like, give me 4 years. I'm like, I won, give me 4 years and you can judge the result of that. But it's led to the conversations of showing up like to a high school graduation or showing up to a PTA event or a Little League baseball event.
And brag about that real quick. You guys were the first people, first mayor and council president to show up to a high school graduation, which is ridiculous. And I'm happy you guys have kind of set that standard.
And it really is. And people take note of that.
Yeah.
So when you're always present and you're always really worried about local issues, it even becomes easier to start talking about national issues. Yep. So if someone comes to me, rather than being an adversary, they're coming to me now knowing that I'm trying my best locally. And if I have a difference of opinions, it's much more of a rational discussion of like, well, here's why you and I differ on those things. So it becomes less of a screaming match. And don't get me wrong, there will always be the screaming matches, but we're trying our best to, I think, unify locally. And that's really the best opportunity to do it. It kind of takes those nationwide, like flashy, hot topics out of it. And I think it kind of gives a trust building opportunity. So
I like that. Now, Roxy, at the council level, you're kind of like the one that when you have your council meetings, right? That's an opportunity for the constituency to come and talk to you guys directly. So, in your 6 months, have you kind of had constituents come and challenge you on any of these types of things? And if so, how do you guys kind of handle that? Or is there any controversy within the council there about some of these topics and that you have to navigate as president?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Like, it's only been a few months, so knock on wood, we haven't had anything that's been super difficult to handle. But you have constituents who come up every now and then, and and they're very passionate because these are things that concern them. That this affects their daily life, and and that's when you think about politics and you think like, oh, politics is dirty. A lot of people think like, I don't want to get involved in politics. I don't want to think about it because it's just you don't know what to think. You don't know who to believe. Blah blah blah. But like politics, literally, like it's every part of your life is basically it's based on what your government is doing. Yeah. So if you're not actively involved or like paying attention to what's going on, like, you then don't get the chance to understand like what, how it affects you, and that's really like the main part of it is like how government is affecting you. So, so we've had a couple of people who will come to our council meetings. We just had a rent leveling, ordinance that we passed. That was one of our first businesses of order, was our rent leveling ordinance. And that, we had found on the campaign trail, much to Rob's credit, we had a lot of constituents telling us in our mobile home, communities that they own the unit, but they rent the land, and they were experiencing ridiculous price increases on their rent. And so one of the things that we did was we went and we established a rent leveling ordinance in town, which we didn't have. Surrounding towns in Ocean County did. But then we find out that, there are other communities who are facing similar issues, and so then they come to our council meetings and they say, hey, this was great, but, we're affected by this in another way. Like, and so you get to see different aspects of how, how people are affected by government and, how they're affected by the different laws and ordinances that you're passing. We also had a situation recently where, we have a woman who's been facing issues with her neighbor who is renting out units in her house, which is, not legal. But it's really just a matter of being able to, how can the government come in and step in and say, you can't do this. This is illegal. We have to set certain ordinances in place, and we have to go back to our code and we have to refer to that. So that makes our hands, like, not that it ties our hands, but it makes it difficult for us to be able to do anything in particular to say, like, you can't do this. And it's really, you need to be able to have the backing with your ordinances and your codes to be able to, crack down on something that's affecting your residents.
Yeah, it is cool though. Like, so for instance, the lady that came in, she was having a lot of trouble with her neighbors, and like something that's happening in like Pine Lake Park is that a lot of homes are being like purchased by landlords and they're being rented out. And it's like really the first time this has like kind of really happened at this scale at Manchester, in Manchester Township. So this one lady had been experiencing, living next to bad tenants. And she had been coming to us with like, issues that she had been experiencing, and we're taking incremental steps. Like we were able to pass an ordinance that gives the township a little bit more control over, penalizing landlords for bad tenant behavior. If they're withdrawing on township resources over and over and over and repeatedly, calling the cops. Well, now the landlord has to take out a bond, and that bond can be drawn on to cover the cost of the township having to go out. So it's something to kind of like ensure that they're finding better tenants. But she came in to a council meeting and basically said, hey, you guys have been hearing my needs. Was that ordinance you just had a first reading for, was that because of what you're hearing from me? And the answer was not only hearing from you, but a variety of other residents. And to be able to make impactful change that quickly, like I said before, is like super satisfying. Even something as simple as like, from the administration standpoint, folks will, contact the mayor's office, and a tree on a township owned lot had been growing over their house for 2 years. And, for me to even answer the phone and say, oh, I got you, I'll send them out today. We went out, assessed the situation, and took care of it in a week. That was mind blowing to them. It was that they couldn't believe that not only did the mayor answer his phone our answer a Facebook private message, but literally one day later, the whole crew was there and they waited for 2 years.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's a super satisfying part of like being in it, to like take action and to have people be like, I can't believe the government actually did something for me.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that's definitely, that responsiveness is something that I think is going to gain the trust, right?
Yeah.
Doing those little things that, you're being involved in the community and you want to help. And I find that, it's going to be interesting. And it seems like it's going to be interesting that when you guys realize, like, you did this, here's the dominoes here. Now we got to deal. They didn't. Yeah. I feel like that's going to be fun. Now, I want to talk about the election, because the election was definitely an interesting time. I was monitoring it up here from Poughkeepsie, New York, and looking at it. And it certainly got a little hairy for a little while there, especially before the runoff happened. So talk about what happened? What was your strategy going into the election? Because obviously technology has moved at the speed of, like warp speed. Like it's been incredible. And did you guys have any benefit being younger in terms of using this technology and understanding it a little bit better?
Yeah, I think you were really handling the tech side of things.
Yeah. So I think we did a number of things. So I'll start basically where we knew we were. And we knew that we had a flat out disadvantage in vote by mail. Mm-hmm. And the reason we had a flat out disadvantage in vote by mail is because the way that it works is that the incumbent mayor could visit 27 of the HOAs that we have on a repeated basis. So he could go and basically give an update and have direct access to a significantly large percentage of our voting population. Like, so being the incumbent in Manchester, to be able to go to the 27 HOAs, that you have an advantage, and that the vote by mailers are primarily retirees, folks 55 plus.
Yep. And I have to say, I hate universal vote by mail. I hate it so much.
so in a way, it is convenient, but we knew that we had a disadvantage because the seniors were not necessarily supporting the incumbent for his record, but they were supporting the incumbent because they knew who he was, and they had FaceTime. So a challenge for us immediately was, how do we get access to the seniors? And we tried, and it was difficult. But in every election, we knew we were going to have a disadvantage to vote by mail. So with that said, I think we understood the issues better. I think we were really able to pinpoint what we were trying to speak. We knew the folks in terms of stopping overdevelopment, preserving the rural and suburban character of town, attracting businesses responsibly. So we really knew the messaging, but it was, how do we get it there? And I think what wound up being a huge differentiator is that I believe we were using, a technology stack that the opponents were not. And, canvassing, for instance, like Roxy has taught me this, but, going door to door and meeting people face to face is extremely important. Yes. But what a lot of, I think, old school campaigns miss is that when you're carrying around a clipboard and paper and to write down what happened and to store it, and for you to talk to, say, 500 households in one day with like 24 volunteers.
And the thing is, I know we're nonpartisan, but I do believe, like, it seems like you lean right, like I do.
Yeah, absolutely.
So and the town party should freaking take notes from you and start going door to door everywhere, because they suck.
Absolutely. Something that I think that really helped is that door to door is not new, but the way that it's tracked is, like, previously, right, you'll write it down on a clipboard, and you'll go home with the results of, like, was this person a supporter? What issues did they care about? That data by somebody then needs to be entered into some kind of platform, if any. And a lot of the times, from what I've experienced, it doesn't get entered anywhere. So you're going and you're just tracking the district, and you're like, that's done, and you throw it away and you move on to the next district. So
busy work.
we were using really great software where we were using a mobile canvassing app where I'd go to a door. I know that they were Republican, or I know that they're Democrat. I know their affiliation. I know how often they were voting. I go to the door, have a great conversation, and I know right off the bat, are they supporting me? Are they undecided? Or are they supporting the other guy? What are the issues that were important to them, and take note of it? So what wound up happening, especially in the runoff, this became super important that, like, in the last week of the election, we had a list of thousands of people that we knew that supported us. We knew their phone number. We knew the issues they cared about. We knew who were undecided, and we knew who were voting by mail. So we used this technology platform to go to every single district, track it, but then know the issue. So we can say, like, oh, well, let's pull a call list, because it's an automated dialer, and call all of our supporters the day before and the day of election and make sure that they're getting out. And then something that was really interesting, within the last 4 weeks of the election and the runoff, we made 10,000 phone calls. Wow. And we were able to keep really tight survey data of supporters and non-supporters. I will tell you this much. The survey results of those phone calls had the election split 52-48, and we won 52-48. Wow. Like, it was like we basically knew what was coming in terms of the results. So
Yeah.
it's really the data capture aspect of it. It's not only just going in like shotgunning a district and saying I'm done. You want to know who you're speaking to. Did they support you? Should you go back? What are the issues that are important to them? Collect it, go back again, make phone calls. So I think the data collection aspect of that was really important. And then something else we leveraged in the runoff is that there are data append tools where, you know, the voter records are widely available.
Yep.
Those are voter records that you can purchase. And you'll know that I want to talk to folks that have voted in the last 3 out of 4 general elections and 4 out of 4 general elections. So that's great. But something that's even more important is, man, I really wish I could have those emails. Well, there are services like Accurate Append, where they're designed to upload voter records, and they'll actually go through and they'll match email addresses to extremely accurate percentages.
Wow.
And now I know that we have our 304s and 404s of people that vote, and we were sending them emails in the final weeks of the election.
That's awesome.
And you're getting immediate feedback, either like never email me again, or I hate you. But on average, and the majority, it was like, already voted for you, or absolutely, thank you for reminding me, and I'm with you. But I think like these small little like tactical advantages of being able to know who your voters are, how often they vote, whether they support you or not, being able to call them and email them and text them, like just the data capture of all that, I think wound up being an advantage for us, with the significant disadvantage of not having the access to all the HOAs that the incumbent had.
So, you know, Roxy, you've worked in government for a long time in terms of, you know, especially New Jersey Republicans. And you know how difficult it is to get people involved in local government. Like, that is absolutely pulling teeth. Did you find that your connection to Manchester helped you get volunteers, helped you get people? And, you know, full disclaimer, I'm also friends with Tim Potts, who you ran against. So, you know, I told you flat out, like, I'm rooting for you and Tim to both, you know, have a good election. Like, whoever wins, I'll be pumped. But, you know, I'm not, you know, I told you, I'm like, I'm not necessarily taking sides. But did you find that, you know, having that connection to Manchester helped you and, you know, you guys on your side of the campaign get those people out to go into your corner? And, you know, and obviously having good relationships in Manchester helps. So did you find you had any sort of advantage there?
You know, also, like, I think it definitely helped. Like, you know, one, like, my husband's also from Manchester, so and from Whiting, and so that really helped us with our, you know, with the western side of town. You know, we did very well here in the Whiting section, and I think that had a lot to do with, one, with, you know, our connections here to the community. I think people also really liked what our messaging. I think they liked Rob's position on a lot of things, especially when it came to preserving open space. So I mean, I think it was a lot of different things. I mean, I think it definitely helped, you know, being born and raised here in Manchester. You know, I still knew a lot of people here, a lot of people even from our graduating class moved back here. Yeah. So it's, you know, it helps when, you know, running in your hometown, you know, you have people who remember you from high school or from whatever. And, you know, I like I said, I think it's a few things. It's not always just one silver bullet, but I mean, you know, I think that familiarity, and especially Manchester being a small town, like, I think people get a little like nervous about like outsiders coming in, you know, so when 100%. They see someone is born and raised in that town, they're like, all right, yeah, I trust this person.
Well, I mean, I do have to say, you know, Dr. Trethewey did not help anybody have trust in outsiders coming in. I hope nobody's friends with him, but I was not a huge fan of his role as you know, school board superintendent. But, you know, but it is good when you have an outsider that comes in with passion. And one thing that I did notice, you know, Rob, when you were really trying to connect to the seniors, you were getting into the clubhouses, holding a lot of those meetings. And so I want to ask, do you find that, you know, during the election, what kind of worked better? Kind of leaning into the newer stuff, or still going back to that really like hard grassroots traditional style of, you know, like hitting the bricks, like things like that?
Yeah, I still think at the end of the day that traditional grassroots will likely never be replaced, but using technology to support it, I think, is really what we were able to do well. I think in the last that 4 weeks of the runoff, we ran like a lot of digital ads. We did a lot of social media. I certainly think it gave us an advantage with younger families. But to your point, I think nothing beats getting to speak at an HOA and being able to convince or change like, the minds of 70 people at once. And especially in like the retirees, like meeting somebody and hearing you speak like face to face and hearing your plans and seeing your mannerisms and, being able to like really like see what your handshake feels like and look you in the eyes and see if they can trust you. Like, I don't think that'll ever really truly be replaced. Like even in a digital future, I'm not sure that I think the most important and most impactful thing is still going to be like shaking someone's hand and being able to get them to realize that you're sincere. But I think they're all building blocks. I think, nothing will ever replace grassroots, but being able to get impressions and touch points digitally, it all kind of like works hand in hand. But I think what really did it is that in the last 4 weeks, we knocked 6,000 doors and made 10,000 phone calls. And I don't think there's anything else that can replace that. I think in the total election, I think we probably touched 15,000 doors over the course from like June to December. So even now, like I'll bump into someone and the couple that I talked about before with the tree, I met them 2 years ago. I knocked the door on like an August day. The guy's name's Jason. And like, just because I met him and he knew me and I convinced them that I was a good person, to see them again 2 years later and they'd be like, oh, is that tree thing fixed? And they were like, no, it's not. I can't believe you remembered that. Like those type of impressions, I don't think can ever be outdone by digital. And the difficulty was that we needed to find things that gave us the opportunity to get in front of people because we weren't getting the face-to-face. And a lot of the HOAs, they're private communities, so they're very skeptical when you're there and soliciting's not allowed. And although canvassing isn't soliciting, it's a protected form of speech by the First Amendment. Explaining that to someone that's
not convincing
angry,
a bunch of old people that
you're not doing that.
in the lack of a better term.
Exactly. So
they're not used to it.
Especially when they're not used to it.
Manchester, and I'm sorry not to jump in here, but like, Manchester is a town where no one ever had to canvass. No one's ever done phone calls. No one's ever knocked a door in Manchester for probably close to 30 years or more. So for people, especially young people, to be like knocking on your door in a senior community, they were like, what is happening? Who are you?
Are you
Get out of my neighborhood.
I heard there were burglaries in our area. Get out of here. Young whippersnappers.
And it's absolutely ludicrous that is unknown to Manchester Township that people want to come and actually put effort for your vote. It is incredible that the township, I mean, it's not just Manchester, it's multiple in the country. It's a lot. It's too many.
I'm sure we're not unique. Yeah.
Exactly. But it's just out of this world that we'd be surprised that people try to get our vote.
Yeah. And it's nice too, because, I think in the thick of it in the runoff, when it was one-on-one, it wasn't the three candidates anymore. And to be able to really convey our message the way that we did, and we were able to really kind of like hone in and go after things. We wrote really targeted letters. Pine Lake Park, undersized lots, them being built are like a huge issue, and we're actively working to stop them. The rent leveling thing, really big issue. We were able to pass a rent leveling ordinance in 60 days, but we were able to send targeted letters like telling our plan and like knowing the issues. Nothing will ever replace knowing the issues at a very granular way by neighborhood. And to be able to speak to it, not just broadly, but it's being able to speak to someone's problem that in Pine Ridge South or Pine Ridge at Crestwood compared to Pine Lake Park compared to Roosevelt City. Being able to speak to those precisely in a geographic area gives you an advantage. And then, we only really had the opportunity probably to speak to like 9 or 10 HOAs in the election. There's 27 of them. So that was a disadvantage. But now when we go, it's great because towards the end of now, working for 2 years straight, even now I had the opportunity to speak at HOAs for the first time ever. And you'll hear a lot of things like, I read about you, and now that you're here, I'm happy I voted for you. Like, it's just, it'll never replace the personal connection. So.
And for people that don't understand local, when you talked about, changing 70 minds, that is massive in a local election, because that could be the difference in between winning and losing. And I think, especially for the runoff, that kind of was the difference, was getting that group of 70, that group of 100 to turn around and say, you know what? I was supporting Hudak because after, Palmer spoke pretty well when he handed it over, and I trusted Mayor Palmer, and that was, so changing their minds. And again, not to knock Manchester, we have a lot of old people. Changing old people's minds is a skill, especially as a young kid who, you're a kid to them. We're kids to them. That doesn't, what do you know about the world? What is your wisdom? You're in your 30s. I'm, when I was there, I served here and I did this. And and I feel like you seem like the type of person that at these, HOA meetings, after you got done talking, was willing to sit down and listen to all of them, tell you their stories 9 times over, and be interested all 9 times. But
that's why I don't go to HOAs with him anymore.
Well,
I gotta go. Sean's texted me 30 times.
Something that's fascinating too is that I think everybody is looking for someone that's going to look out for them.
Yeah.
And it really always does come down to trust, because now, even during the campaign, you get a lot of people like, I'm so happy someone young is taking interest. And even our 55 plus, like, they've been through a lot. They've seen a lot. The experiences that they've had have probably led them to not wanting to trust a lot of people in the world, because when you live a lifetime, you realize that there's a lot of crummy people and things that happen. So
you don't
they
want
get to that point.
Change
and they become defensive for a reason. But when you, again, prove yourself through actions, like, it's more than just saying something, you start getting things like, you know what, I'm so happy someone young is taking the ambition to do something good. So you start hearing more and more of that. And we've heard it over the campaign too. And it was even less so, like, not even them like being hypercritical of a young person, is that we couldn't really get the FaceTime.
Yeah.
And it's tough to believe someone on a mailer, right? Mailers help, but you're more likely going to win someone over talking to them than what the mailer says. So,
So did you ever debate doing like Facebook videos? Because there's a lot of boomers on Facebook, not a derogatory term, but yeah, boomers. A lot of boomers on Facebook. Did you ever consider getting on it there, doing a video like, hi, I'm, Mayor Rob Arace, and this is what, I'm running for mayor. This is what I believe. This is what I think is right for you. And is that something, or did you do it and I just not see it? Am I a
well, not in the first. So first off, for some reason, getting me on a video is like pulling teeth. I just can't stand watching myself.
You're a handsome guy. Come on.
Oh, thank you.
I know. Same thing.
Roxy, is that why you asked if this is live streamed or not? Was Rob going to back out?
Oh yeah, exactly. I was like, is this live?
You could ask him. I don't even listen to our episodes because I don't feel like listening to myself. Believe me, I know that feeling.
And it's pulling teeth to get David to come on the show every week. So
we did some video like in the first election, but it wasn't like that Facebook Live. I still think a lot of the times the front facing camera Facebook Live videos are something that I should have done. We certainly thought about it, and in fact, I should probably start doing it.
There's still time. Do the fireside chats, do the AMAs, be like, Mayor Arace, ask me anything. And
they do.
I'm afraid what those little ladies would ask.
You are right. And that does need to happen. I've had a couple of radio interviews on 101.5. Those first couple of radio interviews that I did, I was like, it was so nerve wracking to me to call in, and it's gotten a little bit better. And I used to be very terrified of public speaking, talking to more than 10 people, but now that's pretty much gone away.
I hope so.
Just the repeated speaking in front of people, it becomes more natural. So certainly thought about it. I haven't done any Facebook Lives yet because I'm too hesitant to do them. So
Roxy, only time we did a Facebook Live was last year, or 2 years ago now.
And I didn't know.
Yeah. We had as when I was the campaign manager that year, I wasn't running. And we did it's like a round table. It was just like a coffee clutch kind of thing in someone's home. And he was talking with a lot of a neighborhood of seniors in someone's home. And I put him up on Facebook Live, and he had no idea. And he did great. Everybody loved it because he was able to just organically just talk about the issues that people were concerned with and get questions. And it was kind of almost town hall style. So
will the HOAs allow you to put the HOA things on Facebook Live? Because I feel like that would be awesome if you can go in there and put that on live. And I'm the government now. You can't stop me.
Yeah, that's a good question. She secretly filmed an event of ours when we had Bill Spadia come out a couple times, and I was talking, and she live streamed it too. So I'm best when I don't know.
All right, so spy cam. So Roxy, I'll be sending over some spy cam stuff. I'll Amazon it for you.
My lapel pin will be it.
Roxy, I didn't know you wore glasses. Look right here.
Right. She's wearing the Apple Vision Pros with the big goggles.
Oh man. So I'm curious because I never knew this. And this is a question I've had for a while. I just never had anyone to ask. What is your role as mayor, as council president, in dealing with our representative in the state, our governor, our federal representative? Like, how much are you guys kind of like the lead delegates to talk to them about your wants and your needs for the town? And how hard is it being this little town in New Jersey, and it's like, our borough had the Hindenburg crash, help us. Like, what do you, like, like, I don't even have any ordinance over them, but please help. Like, what is it like?
Yeah.
I mean, that's really like, that's one of our principal, tasks is working with our state representatives, our federal representatives. And we've done a lot of that in the last 6 months, especially Rob, especially when there's something, pressing, like, issues with funding that we need.
Yeah.
We automatically contact our state legislators, our state representatives. And we're like, hey, we need help with this. We need certain funding, or this is happening. We support this bill. We don't support this bill. Talking with Congressman Smith's office and with Congressman Smith directly. He's been a huge help with us.
Yeah.
For us, securing stuff like grant funding. But yeah, that's what we do is we're in contact with our representatives almost,
awesome.
At least once a week.
Yeah, it's interesting.
So just quick question. If you're a constituent and like, say you're trying to get in touch with your state representative or your federal representative, would their complaints, would they be something that they could take to you? Now, obviously you guys are fielding enough complaints with a lot of things, but would like a complaint in that sense where it's like, hey, I've been trying to call Congressman Smith's office and I'm getting no response. Would that be something that they can come to you guys with and say, this is my concern on a federal level? Would you please relay this? Would that be something that I might be putting you guys in a box right now and really screwing you? But
no.
Would this be something that you would be open to kind of being their communicator in that sense?
Yeah, so I mean, day to day, like everybody will reach out to like the administration with any given issue, and we're very happy to act as like a liaison to anybody. And it's really interesting, right? So like a lot of the times the administration, I always joke around like we're basically just customer service representatives, and we'll get a call and either be like, oh, that's our recreation department, that's our senior services, that's our public works, so we have to talk to the tax departments. A lot of the times we're just actually directing it. Yeah, but a lot of people they'll come in and ask questions and we're like, well, that's you should speak with Maria. At the county senior services, or hey, that's a commissioner question. Let's get you in touch with the freeholder or the commissioner board. Yeah. Oh, that's a state legislator question. So we have no problem fielding them. Like, a lot of the times questions will come to me and it is a county question, but then we note it and we'll go to the county and like get the answers. So
cool.
We have absolutely no problem being like the direct point of access to it's really everybody. And it's interesting because like Manchester, we're a 45,000 person town. It's actually the fourth largest town in Ocean County. So it's really interesting that, at least in our legislative district, like we're a big block. We're going to be in LD9, and those are going to be our state representatives. Like we're a huge constituency for them. And a lot of people, they don't realize that because they don't realize that like Whiting's part of Manchester proper, that it's all one town. But
we feel like the redheaded stepsister of Tom's River, Jackson, and Brick all the time. Like we're just like their redheaded stepsister. That's just kind of there.
Yeah, and we're one of the biggest towns by square mileage. We're 82 square miles. Jackson's 110, but we're a big town, and a lot of people don't realize it. So we've actually been able to really kind of wield that. We have needs, our constituents have needs, and I think we've actually probably in the last 6 months have been, I would venture to say, the most effective at actually reaching out to those legislators and representatives. And Chris Smith is actually a resident of ours. He lives in Manchester Township, and being able to, we have friends on the commissioner board, and we're very close with our legislators, even senators like in other counties. We're reaching out for their help. And what you realize quickly is that they're all very willing to help. Like they have this stigma of they're too far away and they don't have their ear to the ground. I gotta say, some of the guys that are there now really care. Like I get calls from people that I never, ever thought in a million years, to your point, would call the mayor of Manchester. And I get those calls and they're very willing to help. That's cool. Congressman Smith, a lot of people will complain about term limits. Congressman Smith has been tremendous. And because he's been there so long, he knows where to go. He sits on the right committees. He has the relationships. His staff has the knowledge. And you go and ask a question and say, I have a need. Can you help me? The answer is always yes. Like they do tremendous work. And I think that had always kind of been our platform, is that if we can't do it, we'll find someone that can. So in 6 months, I think we've made more progress than anybody really ever has. And to your point, like Manchester's always kind of, I think, been forgotten. It's the forgotten town to the west. Everybody thinks it's a small town. It's really not. Like, it hasn't been represented well at the scale that it really is. So that's really what we're trying to do. We've got 45,000 people, and we have needs, and we need them met. So help.
And and the thing is too, like, people would be like, I feel like when they get to that larger level, as much as they want to help, it also is a nice campaign feather in their cap. Like, I did this for this small town, like I didn't do, and it's a good. It obviously, I do think some people do really care, and Chris Smith living in Manchester does help. That he wants to help himself, but overall, like, I feel like it works. It's symbiotic, right? You get what you guys need. They get a nice little note in their thing. Like, maybe we can mention Manchester. Like,
exactly.
Thing.
Exactly.
So Roxy, there's a question for you, because not only are you young, you also happen to be a female. So what was that like? Especially, I feel like still politics is very much in Manchester too, a lot of a man's game, and an old man's game with a lot of it. What was that like being a young female jumping in, throwing your name into the cap? Did you find some people scoffing at you, any barriers, or were they pretty open to that?
It's funny. It actually, when we get this all the time. I'll go to an event with Rob, and I'll just be the two of us that show up from the council and from the administration. And he, people will recognize him right away. And then they'll ask me, "Oh, are you his wife?" I don't care. Like, if they don't recognize me, they don't know who I am. It's totally fine. I just think it's so interesting that people automatically, like, that's the first thing their head goes to is, oh, maybe it's probably his wife.
Are you going to eventually be like, yeah, his work wife? I'm the I'm his work wife. I'm the council president.
It's super crazy because, like, I try my best now too, because I try being mindful of it, and people will be like, "Mayor, how are you?" And I'm like, "And this is the council president. This is the council president." Like, every single person they go to, and I'm like, "Yes, I'm the mayor, and this is the council president." But, like, I'll do it like 12 times, and someone's like, "Oh, is this your wife?" I'm like, "No, it's council president."
That's like How I Met Your Mother. Have you met Ted? Have you met the council president? So obviously that might get a little frustrating, but is that something that you kind of like figured out a way on how to deal with that in a amicable manner? Like,
I mean, most people are always, they're going to feel a little awkward and feel embarrassed, but, I try to, laugh it off and tell them, no, it's okay. It happens all the time. So it's honestly, it's just funny to me. I don't take it, feel like it's a slight or anything or whatever, but, I mean, for the most part, people just kind of laugh it off. So,
found any ways to kind of use it to your advantage in this current climate? Because in this climate, like, identity plays a role in a lot of people's opinions and things. And that's just, identity is a huge deal, whether or not it should be or shouldn't be. That's neither here nor there, but the reality is that it is. So have you found that that's helped you connect with other women that maybe wouldn't have voted for yourself or Rob, like being so young, being like, with your belief system? Has you found that that's been an advantage, or do you try not to play that identity role?
And it's funny because I don't even think about it most of the time, but every now and then I'll be looking around a table of, at our campaign meetings or whatever, and I'll be like, oh, I'm the only woman at this table, but it doesn't matter, but it's just, it brings a different perspective sometimes, and I've, some of the doors that I've knocked, I've had women who were older in senior communities and like, oh yeah, girl power. Like, I'm so happy that you're running, So I do think it helped other women to come out and vote for our ticket. Just because they did see a young woman who was engaged in their local community. And honestly, it's a little bit of a rarity being a young Republican woman in New Jersey. And so, whether I think that's propelled me or not, I don't feel that way. I think I've always been treated equally amongst my peers. Honestly, just being in politics and government, I've never felt like I've had special treatment or been treated differently in a negative way because of that. So it's I do feel like it has been an advantage, though. Bringing in other women and bringing in more women and saying like, oh, hey, she's part of the Republican Party. She seems pretty normal. Like, I agree with what she says. Like, all right, I feel comfortable with this.
She seems normal. I'm not going to go Roxy, but other people might think that. But
that's what it seems like. Okay.
You present well. Fake it till you make it. But
that's what it's all about.
So, have you guys felt an influx of new blood into the Republican Party in the area of like a lot of younger people with you guys jumping in there? I know we're nonpartisan, but the partisanship exists regardless if that's your government stance or not. Have you guys felt that there's more young people being willing to say like, I agree with that. I am more conservative in my belief system, and I'm more willing to be out in the open with fear of being ostracized. Rob, have you seen more people kind of be a little more courageous because you two are young people?
I don't know if I would necessarily say that, like, we were the impetus of it all. I mean, I'm sure that like in surrounding towns in the county, perhaps someone who wanted to get involved would believe that a young person could win an election, like maybe has inspired somebody. I wouldn't say that, there had been a flood of young people that were kind of like following in our footsteps. I would say that I'm sure in the back of some other young minds in surrounding towns, we've shown a path that it's possible. I mean, I will also say that the leadership kind of like in Ocean County within the Republican Party, I think that the leadership has recognized that we absolutely need young people to be involved. So I would say that, there are young familiar faces that you'll see countywide, partywide, that you kind of get a sense that like, these are the guys that are going to be the ones that are leading the next generation of Republicans. And you see that everywhere from every town. And I'm sure in the back of their minds, looking over and seeing that a 29-year-old or folks in their 30s won an election, like, oh, wow, it's possible. But I would also say that like the leadership in general has also recognized that it is important to get young people involved, and it has to happen now, especially in New Jersey. Ocean County is a Republican stronghold. To keep it a Republican stronghold, like the baton's going to have to eventually be passed, and that has been recognized. And even like young women in politics, I'm not going to say it's like widespread, that everyone, is like jumping to get it to happen, but there have been leaders in the party that are like, if we want to move the party forward into the next decade or more, like this has to happen. So I would say that that's also helped that they've recognized it, because we've also had some help. And there certainly are, like, I think young people around the county that are like kind of in waiting, and they're going to wind up being the people, I think. So
one of the things that I, hope that you guys would push for, and something that I would love to see pushed for, I mentioned this on the show with David, is I want to see more Republicans getting into these deep blue strongholds, your Essex counties, your heavy cities, where Republicans are just kind of like, it's going to go blue anyway. And it's, how did it get blue? Because these people, a lot of the, leftist people will knock on the doors and be able to go to a project and reach 1,000 people in 5 hours, where, a lot of your conservatives, you have to go to a Whiting, and you're lucky that you get to like 200 people because it's so spread out. So it's difficult. So I would love to see more of an effort. And I don't know, you're a small town mayor, small town council. So, Roxy, you have a few more connections being involved with the party for so long. But I would just love to see, especially in New Jersey, where the governor's race was significantly closer than I think anyone thought it was going to be. I would just love to see more of an effort, and for Republicans to realize we need to play the long game. It's not going to be in the first cycle, the second, the third, the fourth. It might be 10, 15 years down the road that we get deep blue to go light blue to then get purple and then maybe go red and go back and forth. But if we could just turn 10% and, into battlegrounds around the, I mean, it's a statewide thing, but I think that also would affect everyone in a trickle down in terms of the governor's race and things like that. So that's my plea to you guys, to kind of communicate with the rest of New Jersey Republicans to just stop just going to the urban and suburban sectors. Get into those urban areas and, battle. Freaking fight.
Well, and I think to your exact point, I think at the end of the day, it's about sincerity, and being genuine, and obviously on a conservative like Republican platform. I think sometimes what it turns into is that I'm going to fight them because they're wrong, but really it's like your policies and the platform that you're on. It should be that you sincerely believe that is what is best. Like that's what you believe is going to lift people out of like the issues that they're dealing with. It's the best solution to issues. It's the best way to lift people out of poverty. It's the best way to provide health care. It's the best way to raise a family. And you have to convince them from a sincerity standpoint that like you're not here to prove them wrong, you're here to help them. And I feel like that's sometimes maybe where I think both parties go wrong, where it's more so like I'm going to debate you to win this argument, when it's really like, well, I think better messaging wins. And if you do the work and you go into the urban areas and you can convince people that you are there for their best interest, you're not there because you want their vote. It's convincing them that you're sincere and that your position is what's better for the community. And I think we can do a better job of that. So.
And I love hearing that. Now, would you guys consider yourselves kind of old guard Republican people or more like the newer populists? Because there's definitely a divide between, your older, we love war, we love that like type of conservative, and kind of the new populists, like, no, we kind of like the Constitution more than we like going to war. And that's really what we like. Like, where would you guys kind of find yourself on that? Like older guard versus, I guess, lack of a better term.
I kind of pigeonholed them on that one.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. Do you love war? Or do you
exactly.
like war?
That was, I mean, do you like war? There we go. But so where would you guys put yourselves? Roxy, you can go first. Ladies first.
I wouldn't say I'm either or strictly. I'm not strictly in either camp.
Okay.
I think it comes down to what making common sense decisions and having common sense judgment. It's one thing I learned when I was in college as a political science major. Not everything is black and white. Life is very gray. So, to be able to say I'm one way or the other, I think it's not responsible to say, I believe in this. I believe, we should go to war. We shouldn't go to war. It depends on the circumstances. It depends on the situation.
I love it.
I mean, I will say that like, if you were to ask me, do I think it's okay to say I love my country? The answer is yes. I think being patriotic is fine. I think finding pride in your country and where we've started and where we've come and seeing the beauty and what was built and what was constructed. And I think, using it as a mechanism for liberty and seeing what various groups have had to overcome, knowing that they've had to overcome it, but a mechanism had put in place for them to do it, and kind of like watching the United States grow to like say that, I love this country and it's okay to say that. I think we're the best in the world. I think it's okay to say that, protecting American interests, like, depending on the mechanisms and tools necessary to do that via economic levers or military levers, like to Roxy's point, it's all gray. But I think to be able to say that, I think we're the best country in the world and I'm proud to be an American and I believe in protecting American interests and I believe that we're an economic powerhouse and I believe that can be used for good. Like, perhaps that's what the Republican platform is. Like, I think promoting the ideals of like, looking up to the flag and what it represents. I think that those are all things that I'm perfectly fine with standing for. So old versus new, like, maybe that's the Republican platform, being able to be proud of your country, proud of where it's come from, proud of where you can go. Like, even for me, like I grew up in a single family household. My dad passed away. My grandparents came from Europe. My family was like probably lower income. What other country in the world? Not to say that I'm like some uber amazingly successful person, but what other country in the world can you have someone who like raised in a single family and almost come from nothing, and to have your mom support you and kind of like fight for you, and then you get to become mayor. Like that doesn't happen in a lot of other places. And I think to say that like I'm proud that I'm in a country that promotes that is a perfectly fair thing to say. And believe it or not, there's a lot of people out there that say that that's not okay. So I'm not with those people.
Yeah.
So
I love that.
Yeah, I was going to say, I can't believe you pigeonholed him like that one. Because I'm not going to let you get away with that. But also, too, I do feel like, Alex, you talked about just positions all the time, whether on the podcast or off of it. And I've never really given myself a clear definition of what I am. Mainly because I don't know. It seems like you guys kind of agree with the position I'm about to like put forward. But it's like you have a core set of beliefs. And you have certain things that you're really not going to walk away from. Like, okay, I'm not going to step over this line. But things have context. There's situations that have context and need to work through them. And, you bash your head against your beliefs on them. Like, okay, does this actually go across? Like, what's happening here? Because you never know what could pop up. But you have to shift depending on what's needed in that position. And it's hard when you shackle yourself to an ideology and then just decide like, oh, I can only be this way because that's what my ideology is. And then you just really run into a lot of issues that way.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well said. Well said.
Absolutely.
Guys, this was a fantastic podcast. I really enjoyed having you both on.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Because my first podcast, so thank you.
Yeah,
yes, I feel privileged. That's fantastic. I just turned you into a war hawk, but but yeah, no, this was lots of fun. Just quickly, if someone here from Manchester is listening and they're like, "That was cool,"
I have one more question after this.
But Dave, what is it? Go ahead, ask it.
Okay. This is a complete non sequitur. It has absolutely nothing to do with politics or Manchester. What is your favorite recent movie you've watched?
Ooh, Roxy, ladies first. I'm putting you on the spot.
No, I'm not a movie person, so Rob goes first.
Favorite recent movie I've watched? Oh, that's a good question. Holy, what movies have I watched?
I know, I'm trying to think now.
If you had to help me, I'm asking my wife.
If it's going to take too long, then go with a favorite movie that you haven't seen or you want.
I'll tell you a movie that I should have always have seen, and it's not a recent movie, but I just saw it, and it might blow your mind. But I just watched Saving Private Ryan like 2 weeks ago.
Really?
Wow. And
yeah. And I will say that it showed like the brutality of war.
Yeah.
And I was honestly like I honestly was so blown away to think that, like, being 29 and still feeling like you're a young 18-year-olds kind of like going to a beachhead and like going through what they went through, honestly was like just super humbling and like mind blowing. It's really difficult to believe. And it was certainly like just like the entire thing was a very surreal movie to watch. And I wanted to watch it my entire life. And then finally, like my friends for like months have been like, I can't believe you haven't seen this movie. We finally sat down and watched it. And I was like, wow. Yeah. And it really held up. Yeah. Like I think it was made in like 98, and it seems like the production quality is as good as today's. So.
Yeah, were you born yet?
Wow.
Ouch. I was 5.
So that was 2.
Roxy, since Rob cheated, you can too. It doesn't have to be a reason.
Yeah, and he gave you time, so I hope you were thinking.
Yeah.
Oh, no. And it's funny because I'm not a big movie person, so I don't.
Show.
I mean,
give us a TV show. Give us something.
Oh, boy.
Sean, help her out.
I know. Sean, what's a good movie that we've seen? I mean, that's the problem. I'm a big like spooky movie person.
That's
so
I love horror movies.
Tim Burton, like
David loves
Tim
that
Burton
too.
directs.
Yes. So Tim Burton.
Sleepy Hollow is probably my all-time favorite.
That's a good one. That is a good one. Okay. Perfect. All right. So what I was going to end off with before David just
I brought it down from war.
You brought it down from No, you brought it down from Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah, no, but that's learning about the atrocities of war.
All we know, Rob officially likes war. Like it's now official that's all he's about right now.
And I'm like, now let me tell you, my favorite movie.
Oh man. So
those are all good movies.
They are. The Pacific,
I'm rewatching Brothers. I'm rewatching Band of Brothers right now.
Oh my God. Anyway, so if anyone listening to this is from Manchester or anywhere and they're thinking this is pretty cool, they're young people, I'm young, I want to get involved, what's their best way to get involved in local politics that you guys can think of?
They can call me or text me at 732-691-9365.
I love it. I love it.
Wife in the background just went, oh my God.
Just so you know, the entire town has my phone number. They're on every pamphlet.
I was actually just hope you were giving your wife's number. Like, I feel like that would have been even funnier if she just starts getting texts from randos. Like, hey, man, Arace, I want to get involved. He'll just forward you another one and be like, I hate you, Rob.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So, Roxy, from your standpoint, working within government for a while, what's a good way? Because I have to say, I'm here in Poughkeepsie and I want to get involved. And I'm like stonewalled. Like the local Conservative Party sucks here and Republican Party is not good here. They're good in campaign time, like getting the message out. But in terms of like, I'm like, hey, I want to get involved. Like, I don't know, maybe they see my podcast and they're like, this guy is a psycho. So I don't want him in there. But what would you recommend for somebody that wants to be involved?
I mean,
besides Rob?
Yeah, our club started there. Like our local club, like no one was doing anything, no one had any direction, and we just kind of took the bull by the horns. We came in and we're like, hey, you guys need a club president? There we go. And we just came in, they needed direction, they needed guidance, and we were just like, hey, we want to do stuff. How do we do it? Let's get involved. Contact your state party. Whether you're Republican or Democrat, get involved with your state party, ask them, what do you guys need help with? I'll be there. I'll come to events. I'll knock doors. I'll make phone calls. And honestly, you meet so many great people doing that. Like I've met so many awesome people in my career, just by doing a phone bank, and knocking doors with volunteers. And, it's you meet all walks of life. So yes, definitely, just Google your state party, call them up. If that's a dead end, next thing I would say is call your local elected officials, tell them you want to get involved, or just even get involved in your PTA, local community organizations.
School board.
Start there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I will say a lot of people ask me, how can they get involved in 80? Like, I know it's like sounds super cliche, but like 80 to 90% of it really is just showing up and doing something. And like out of college, I had, one of my professors was an assembly person, and I met with the senator, and the answer was always, oh, well, if you want to get involved, you got to put signs in the ground for other campaigns. And like, that's an answer I never wanted to hear. Mm-hmm. And then guess what? The moment that I finally got over myself and wound up, I think I met with a senator. I went to a political event. I got connected with someone from a congressional campaign who told me to call my municipal chair, and that was Roxy. So it's like, and then I kind of like just through there have showed up to 80, 90% of the time. And people, like, if you're the person putting signs in the ground, and if you're the person phone banking, and if you're the person door knocking, and if you're the person showing up and supporting candidates, well, one day the next logical person to turn to when it's time for an opening to be filled, it winds up being you. And there really aren't a whole lot of people that are willing to do that. And you can do it very rapidly by like always being the face that's there. You ordered the pizza, you picked it up. Like it's stuff as simple as that. And when you're always there day to day and always helping, like the next like logical decision is like, well, you're up.
So basically, do the mailroom work.
Exactly.
You build a reputation for yourself. You build trust. You build relationships that way. And it's not about paying your dues, but it's more so just being part of the team.
Yeah. Showing that you want to be there, showing that it's not a one-off. You actually want to be involved. So, and because, Roxy has to be political, I'm going to amend her statement because it's my show. If you're a Republican, call. If you're a Democrat, don't. But I'm going to amend it for her. She has to be nice. 81 million people were involved with a terrible decision. So I'm just going to leave it at that. But so I can get in trouble. I'm not getting you guys in trouble. You could disavow me later. Just completely disavow me publicly.
I try to include everybody.
Roxy's been trying to distance her away from me for a long time. But but anyway, again, guys, thank you so much for coming on. That is the Manchester Township Mayor Rob Arace and the council president and one of my friends from my childhood, Roxy Conniff. Thank you guys so much for coming on.
Thanks for having us, Alex.
Nice meeting you guys.
Absolutely. David, do you have anything to say before we jump out of here?
No, it was a really good time. Really, really good time.
Yeah, I had a great time. I got to talk to more local officials. Maybe I'll start reaching out to more, and I can paint all of them as Warhawks. That'll be my goal. Paint every single local official I talk to as a Warhawk. So once again, Alex Cuesta Show. If you like what you heard, like, share, follow, subscribe, rate 5 stars, Spotify and iTunes. Spread this word of mouth. Find us on social media at the Alex Cuesta Show. We will be back next week, everyone. So long.